Some riders can hold a stoplight with a 500-pound cruiser without their knees complaining, and some riders can't anymore. And that has nothing to do with what's actually killing these engines. What's killing them is quieter than that. It's habits, ordinary, everyday habits that feel harmless, that most owners never think twice about, done by riders who take good care of their bikes and would swear up and down they're doing everything right. I spent 38 years with my hands inside these engines, mostly Harleys and Indians, plenty of Hondas, Yamahas, and Kawasaki's too. And I can tell you, the engines that came back to my shop in pieces almost never failed because the rider was reckless. They failed because of habits nobody warned them about. Today, I'm walking through 7 of those habits, the real mechanical reason each one does damage, and I'm going to correct one popular claim floating around the internet that gets the facts flat wrong. Stick around for that one, because a lot of channels are telling you something that simply isn't true, and I'll show you the actual paperwork. Let's start with the one almost every rider gets wrong at some point, usually without knowing it. Number 1, running the wrong oil, or just running it too long, in an air-cooled V-twin. On a liquid-cooled car engine, the radiator does the heavy lifting. On an air-cooled cruiser, the oil is doing double duty. It's lubricating the engine and it's hauling heat away from parts the air can't reach. That oil runs a lot hotter than owners tend to expect. And once it crosses a certain temperature, ordinary oil starts to break down and lose its film strength. Sit in stop and go traffic on a summer afternoon, and that oil can climb well past what a car engine ever sees. On top of that, most cruisers share their oil between the engine, the transmission, and a wet clutch, which means the oil also has to carry the right friction rating. That rating has a name: JASO MA or MA2. Automotive oil marked energy conserving has friction modifiers built in to help a car's fuel economy, and those same modifiers can make a motorcycle's wet clutch slip and glaze. I've pulled clutch packs out of Harleys and metric cruisers alike that looked like they'd been coated in candle wax, and every single time the culprit was car oil in a bike built for JASO-rated oil. It's not an instant death sentence. Some riders run car oil for years without trouble, but when the JASO-rated stuff costs maybe a few dollars more a quart, there's no reason to gamble your clutch pack to save that difference. But this next one might be the one nobody expects, because it doesn't look like abuse at all. It looks like being careful. Number 2, only riding short trips and never letting the engine reach full operating temperature. If your cruiser lives in the driveway and only comes out for a 10-minute run to the store, you might actually be doing more harm than the guy who rides it hard on the highway. Combustion pushes water vapor into the crankcase, and if the engine never holds full temperature long enough to boil that moisture off and vent it out through the breather, it accumulates in the oil. Over time, that moisture emulsifies, corrodes internal parts, and eats away at the oil's protective qualities. This isn't a theory I'm making up on the spot either. BMW had to issue a factory recall on one of their touring bikes years back, specifically because frequent short trips in cold weather caused water to build up in the oil tank. Different brand, different bike, but the same physics apply to any engine that never gets hot enough long enough. The fix is almost embarrassingly simple. Once in a while, take the long way home and let that engine hold full temperature for 30 minutes or more. And this next one is where I need to stop and set the record straight, because half the internet has this one wrong. Number 3, ignoring proper storage, and believing the popular claim that Milwaukee-Eight engines have a recall for oil problems. If you park your cruiser for the winter without draining old fuel or adding stabilizer, without a battery tender, and without at least an occasional full warm-up ride, you're inviting trouble. Old fuel varnishes injectors and carburetor jets. A battery left to slowly discharge sulfates and dies early, sometimes within a single season. And on certain Harley Milwaukee-Eight engines built between 2017 and 2019 specifically, there's a documented tendency for oil to migrate and pool in the crankcase during storage, sometimes called oil sumping. That habit of parking a bike for months without a second thought was a warning sign plenty of owners simply ignored. And it's a big part of why this next myth spread as far as it did. Here's the part that gets misreported constantly. That issue is covered by Harley's own Technical Service Bulletin, document M1450. It is not, I repeat, not a federal recall through the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. I pulled the actual bulletin off the NHTSA document server myself before making this video, and it lays out a redesigned oil pump for engines showing symptoms, a fix that became standard equipment starting in 2020. Calling it a recall makes for a scarier headline, but it isn't accurate, and on a channel built around getting the facts right, I'm not going to repeat somebody else's mistake just because it gets clicks. That's just the storage side of things. The writing side has its own quiet killer, and this one comes straight out of how cruisers are built to feel. Number 4. Lugging the engine, meaning heavy throttle at low RPM in top gear. Big cruiser V-twins make gobs of torque down low, and that tempts a lot of riders into holding top gear and just rolling on the throttle instead of downshifting. Here's why that's a problem. At low engine speed, the oil pump is turning slower and putting out less volume right when the load on the crank bearings is highest. That combination thins the protective oil film between the crank journals and the bearings, and under enough load, it can lead to actual metal-to-metal contact. It also stresses the pistons and ring lands, and in bad cases can trigger detonation, which is the kind of thing that ends with a bottom-end rebuild, one of the most expensive repairs on this entire list. Now, I want to be fair here. Cruising along gently at low RPM with a light hand on the throttle isn't the problem. It's rolling on hard from down low that does the damage. The habit to build is simple. If you want to accelerate, drop a gear first. And speaking of habits that feel harmless, here's one almost every rider has done at least once without thinking twice about it. Number 5. Letting ethanol blended fuel sit in the tank without stabilizer. Ethanol is what chemists call hygroscopic, meaning it pulls moisture straight out of the air. Once enough water accumulates in that fuel, it undergoes something called phase separation, where a corrosive water and ethanol layer drops to the bottom of the tank and the octane in what's left above it takes a hit. That corrosive layer attacks steel, aluminum, brass, and older rubber and plastic fuel system components directly, and evaporating fuel left behind leaves varnish that clogs carburetor jets. I've rebuilt more carburetors than I can count that were gummed solid from a single winter of neglected fuel. On Harleys, on Kawasaki's, on Suzuki's, didn't matter the badge. If your cruiser is going to sit for more than a few weeks, either run the tank down and add stabilizer, or keep it topped off to limit the airspace where moisture collects and drain the float bowls if it's carbureted. It costs 5 minutes and a bottle of stabilizer. The alternative costs you a carburetor rebuild. Now here's a habit that hides in plain sight because the engine still runs fine right up until it doesn't, so nothing ever seems wrong. Number 6. Skipping valve clearance checks, and on certain older Harleys, ignoring the cam chain tensioner. On engines without hydraulic lifters, and that includes plenty of metric cruisers, along with the Harley V-Rod, valve clearances drift as the valves and seats wear over tens of thousands of miles. When that clearance closes up too tight, the valve can't fully seat, which means it can't shed heat into the seat the way it's designed to, and a valve that can't cool itself eventually burns. That's a top-end repair that can run anywhere from a couple $100s on a simple metric single up past $1,000 on a more complex engine, and it climbs fast the longer it's put off. Now, hydraulic lifter Harleys, the Twin Cam and Milwaukee-Eight, don't need routine valve adjustment, so that part doesn't apply to them. But there's a separate issue specific to Harley Twin Cam engines built between 1999 and 2006. Those engines used plastic cam chain tensioner shoes that wear out over time, sometimes anywhere from under 30,000 miles to well past 70,000, depending on how the bike was ridden. And when they fail, they can shed debris straight into the oil pump and starve the engine of oil. That's not a cheap fix either. It can mean a new oil pump, a new cam plate, and a full flush of the oiling system. Harley redesigned the system with a hydraulic tensioner starting in 2007 for exactly this reason. If you've got one of those older twin cams, get the tensioner inspected well before it's due to fail. It's a fraction of the cost of what happens if it lets go. Last one, and this one comes down to something as simple as airflow. Number 7. Prolonged idling and letting the cooling fins get clogged or coated. Air-cooled engines depend entirely on air moving across those fins to shed heat. Sit at idle in traffic for too long, or let dirt and road grime build up and block airflow, and heat climbs faster than the engine can get rid of it. Push that far enough, and you're looking at warped valves, a blown head gasket, or, in the worst cases, a seized cylinder. This is exactly why Harley built the engine idle temperature management system into its touring models, which cuts fuel to the rear cylinder when idle temperatures climb too high, and why Indian added rear cylinder deactivation to its Thunderstroke engines. Even the manufacturers know idle heat is a real problem worth engineering around, and if the factory is willing to redesign fuel delivery just to manage it, that should tell you it's not a small thing. Now, air-cooled twins are built to run warm, so don't panic over a couple minutes at a stoplight. The habit that actually causes damage is sustained idling in stop-and-go traffic, combined with fins that haven't been cleaned in years. Hose off the grime, keep an eye on symptoms like knocking or a sudden loss of power, and give the bike a chance to move air across those fins when you can. So, there they are, 7 habits, and not one of them requires you to ride less or baby the bike. Wrong oil, short trips that never get hot, sloppy storage, lugging the throttle, stale ethanol fuel, a skipped valve check, and blocked airflow at idle. None of that is exotic. It's the small stuff, done 100 times without thinking, that adds up over the years. What I keep telling guys at the shop is this: these engines, the good ones, are built to run for decades. Riders are putting well over 100,000 miles on Milwaukee-Eight and Thunderstroke engines and handing the bike down to their kids without ever touching the bottom end. That's not luck. That's an engine that got the basic habits right for years on end. The badge on the tank doesn't decide whether your engine lasts. What decides it is whether you feed it the right oil, let it run hot enough to burn off moisture, store it properly, keep the throttle out of the lugging zone, and give the fuel and the airflow the attention they need. Get those 7 things right, and there's no reason this engine doesn't outlive the bike it's bolted into, and outlive the rider who's babying it too in the best possible way. None of this takes a mechanic's toolbox or a shop full of tools. Most of it is just paying attention to the same bike you already know inside and out. Check the oil rating before you top it off. Take the long way home once in a while. Add stabilizer before the bike sits for the season. Downshift instead of lugging. Keep the fuel fresh. Get the valves and the tensioner looked at on schedule. Hose the fins off and don't let the bike idle forever in a parking lot. Small habits repeated for years are the whole difference between an engine that gets traded in early and one that ends up in a grandson's garage someday. If this saved you from a mistake you didn't know you were making, that's exactly what this channel is here for. So stick around, because there's plenty more where this came from.